Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adventures in Angular, the podcast where we keep you updated on all things Angular related. This show is produced by two companies, Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs is where we create top end devs who get top end pay and recognition while working on interesting problems and making meaningful community contributions. And Envoy, which provides remote design and software development services on a task basis, so clients only pay when tasks are delivered and approved. In today's episode, we will talk about a very, at least in a first glance, advanced topic, but perhaps we're going to see that it doesn't need to be so complicated as it initially seems, which is contributing to Angular. Yep, it's you, the developer that uses Angular, contributing to the actual creation of this amazing framework. My name is Lucas Paganini. I'm your host in the podcast, and joining me in today's episode is the also great host, Subrat Mishra.
Hello, everyone.
And our special guest, Santosh. Hey, well, and let me introduce Santosh a little bit. So he has a very long intro if we're going to talk about everything that he does. So he is a senior software engineer at Celonis, a Google developer expert for Angular, so he knows what he's talking about. He's a GitHub star, NX champion, MMA winner. Jokes, but yeah, he does have awesome titles. He loves contributing to Angular and its ecosystem. He's also a co-founder of This Is Learning, and he's also the author of NGX Builders package and part of the Nest.js add-ons core team. Besides that, somehow he finds some free time to also run his own talk show, which is called This Is Tech Talks, where he invites industry experts to discuss different technologies. So Santosh, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, I was looking for this 2 months I was free, and then of course I've been reached out, and I was like, okay, let's do this. Yeah, excited to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's just dive into the subject. So Santosh, first off, let's demystify the complexity of contributing to Angular. So how hard is it in practice? Because also let's not pretend that it's like super trivial and any developer that is just getting started is going to be able to do this. This is probably not for someone that is just getting started, but how complex really it is, because I myself have been working with Angular for many years, and I'm not so sure if I would be able to be a valuable contributor to the Angular code base. It just feels too complex and too big of a code base, too big of a project even to find myself in there. So how would you advise people that want to make Angular better?
Remember, so you don't have to contribute in every area, right? So if you think about Angular as a framework, you have forms, you have router, you have so many things, right? I mean, different packages which gets published inside Angular. So someone to get started with, I always recommend to actually start with docs, right? So because docs are like, of course, when you are like learning Angular, you will probably end up at the docs, right? And if you think like there is something which is missing or which is not well explained, or maybe written in a complex way, it depends upon the writer, right? I mean, some engineer, let's say, who is working on Angular, probably they may not explain it in an easier way because they already know stuff, which happens with all of us, right? Even at day-to-day work, when we write some design doc, as we already know those things, we try to complex it unnecessarily because that's the only way probably we can write it. But not that might not be a good in the terms of someone who is new to the framework. And docs should always focus on making it easier, like to get new learner, right? Or someone who is learning the technology to get into this framework. So that's one way you can think about it, like making your first contribution. Also, like Angle keeps improving. So they're adding more features, more and more features. So it's possible that some docs are missing because, Angular team is not really big, right? So it has probably 25 people who work on framework. So maintaining docs and everything, it's a little bit complex, but they're doing a great job. I mean, they're trying to keep their docs up to date, which is a good thing. But yeah, that's also your opportunity. Once you become like, and one more thing, right? I mean, contributing to docs also gives you some idea about how the Git flow works. I mean, GitHub, because they use GitHub Actions, right? So like how the GitHub Actions are, what are the steps which are necessary, basically making your setup on your local machine, right? And making sure the build works, and you are able to verify all those things locally. You also learn about a lot of Git concepts, which I learned. I mean, believe me, when I made my first contribution, I had no idea about rebase. And of course, it's not a bad thing, right? I mean, probably never used it. So you learn a lot of concept as well when contributing to docs. So it makes your future PRs much better. But now let's come back. What after docs? I mean, of course, you can still continue contributing to docs, but as you said, Angular is a very big framework. There are many more areas. So this is what I used to do when I started contributing. So I used to watch the repository. That's the first thing which I did. I just clicked on watch, and I started watching all the issues which are raised and see like which issue can be like very, maybe not easy, but yeah, which issue is something which I can pick up, right? Because let's say if there is something which is a bug, and I think I can probably debug that bug, probably I'll pick it up. So keep and watch, and let's say if you're planning to start contributing to framework, just go ahead and click on that subscription button, which is on GitHub. So you start getting all the notification about new issues, and then probably don't jump in. I mean, of course, you saw the first issue and you try to go ahead and pick it up. But I think for some time, just read it, like what people are doing, see the different PRs, like how people probably wrote the code. Try to read the code, try to debug it locally. I mean, it's not something which you have to do it in framework because you're already using framework, right? If you're an Angular developer, you are installing Angular and you're using it. So try to debug it on your local machine, see how code works. For example, let's say if you're talking about form, just add debugger, right? And then see like what happens when you try to create a form group, or when you try to create a form control, or if you're trying to add a validation, what are the code which is executed inside the framework, which also gives you enough idea. I would say pick up an area to start with. If you think you want to contribute to forms, or if you want to contribute to router, pick up one area. You also have, so I mean, to give you an idea, Angular has 3 different repositories. It's not like only Angular. So Angular has a framework which is inside Angular/Angular, but they have CLI and they have material as well. So if you think like, okay, the framework is something not, maybe you don't want to contribute that much, go to CLI. I mean, CLI is, everyone is building CLI, right? And that code may be something which may be familiar to you, maybe because that's written in plain TypeScript, right? There's nothing advanced stuff there. You can pick up many issues there. I think there are still many open issues in CLI. You can do that. Or if you think you're someone who is better at designing a component and you know how to do it, just go to Angular components, which is nothing but the Angular material. And yeah, so these are the areas where you can go ahead and contribute.
And what do we need to keep in? So first off, I love that you mentioned starting with the docs, because first off, yes, this is the easiest part for someone just starting out, and it's also the most valuable for the community as a whole, because in terms of people that are just starting out, they have a fresh mind because they didn't got used to many of the things that we might take for granted, but may be confusing to someone just getting started. So if they do start with the docs, then they are the ones most qualified to make it simpler, right? Of course, they have the issue that they don't have advanced knowledge of the framework, so maybe they wouldn't be able to understand some of the other things that could be presented. Um, so that's always a challenge. But they can definitely think about ways to simplify their understanding, especially if they just finished going through the docs for the first time. So it's like someone just read the entire docs for Angular, then they have most of the knowledge that they need to contribute to it, and they also have fresh in their minds which were the parts that weren't very easy to get through. So that's an excellent point. I think it makes total sense. When we do get to the code, though, do you think that, like you mentioned, oh, perhaps you're not too comfortable with this particular part of the code, so maybe you can try this other one. But do you think there's any part that has more or maybe less easier things to do? Like I know that many open source repositories have issues tagged as good first contribution, right? But I'm not so sure if there's still room for that in Angular, because I imagine that if there's anything that is pretty easy, then the actual team members of Angular would probably address that fairly quickly. So yeah, how is that in terms of easy tasks to do in some of those inner modules of Angular?
There are still, because as I said, like Angular is not a very big team, and in case they find some good first issue, they do mark it as good first issue. Because I have, when I started, of course, I have picked up some good first issues myself, and mostly like right now, if you want to contribute, you can find a lot of issues probably related to docs, because Angular team just like created a new doc. If you remember, like it used to be angular.io, and now it's angular.dev. So this is a new website, and there are things to do, and Angular team needs your help, right? So they mark them as good first issue, or you can search for docs. They might not be good first issue, but you can just search, go to label and just search for docs, and you'll be able to find some good first issue to contribute with. But yeah, if there are some good first issues, they do mark it. So it's not like there are nothing, or there are no good first issues in Angular. It's not like that. I think many projects have that, and that those can be related to some migrations, maybe some code which was like there from a long time. They wanted to remove it. Maybe some to-dos. Those are kind of things which you can actually pick up from the repository. So I haven't seen many good first issues in CLI, but of course there are good first issues in Angular and components. But it's hard to find. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have one question like coming to my mind for a newcomer. Like suppose they come and they know that Angular is quite popular, and suppose they select a doc as issue or some good first issue. There might be that a lot of other similar developer also trying to create pull request. So how to make that your pull request will be picked up first and to be reviewed first? There is some criteria for that, or they have some contribution guidelines and all?
Yeah, so to make sure like you are not doing the same thing which another developer is doing, make sure that you comment there and tell them, okay, you are doing it. It's not like you have to get it assigned, but you have to let them know that you are going to take care of it, right? So the team knows that you are working on it, and if anyone else, like if I go to the same issue and I see, okay, you have already commented, so probably I'll not do the same. And it's unwritten rule in open source that you should not do it, but I have seen some over curious developers maybe, and they just go ahead and open the PR, but the chances are that their PR will be rejected.
Okay.
It depends upon you, right? If you have already commented that you are taking care of it and you already have PRN working, then of course there are no chances that the other person's PR will be picked up.
So we need to mark that we are looking into it and then raise a PR, right?
Exactly. Just first comment. If there are no comments, people will think that okay, no one is working on it. So make sure that you have clear intent, right? You have you have given your intention that you are going to work on it.
Yeah, as you are discussing about like for a complete beginner, like would you like to put a light upon like we need to fork the project, then from there we need to create a PR from our repository to that, because a lot of people are used to with a single repository, just clone it, push the code, but here it will work little different.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in open source, it's different, right? So you directly don't push it unless you have maintainer probably.
Yeah.
And, but if you're someone who's starting, so the first step is, of course, go ahead and fork the project. Good thing about, I think, the tooling has improved a lot. I mean, because when I started contributing back in 2019, it was a little bit of a mess up because I think they were using Bezel. It was not compatible with Windows, a lot of things, and it was hard to set up. But now I think you also have GitHub code spaces, which is free for open source, right? So let's say you can just fork your project and then you can start making changes. For example, especially in terms of docs changes, it has become much easier, right? Because earlier I had to clone everything, run it on my machine, and make sure that everything is working. But now, like thanks to GitHub giving code spaces for free, you can just open it in code spaces and then just make your changes and push the PR. So it depends upon how you want to take it. If you are comfortable using code spaces, of course, it's free for everyone. And if you want to do it on your local, just go ahead and do that. But one thing which I always recommend in case you're planning to like be a long-term contributor. So newcomers, they have like tendency to actually just push everything into their master branch and open a PR, which makes things a little bit complicated. Because what in case you want to open another PR? Let's say in open source, there's thing, right? I mean, it's open source because and no one has dedicated or what you can say the allotted time to do review your PR. So it may take 1 day, it may take a month, right? It depends, really depends. But you may have a new PR which you may want to work, or a new issue which you want to pick up within that month. So always do this. So in case you're forking a new project, always create a new branch. Create a new branch and then open a PR. So it gives you like, then what you can do is you can actually create different branches and you can still work on it. Meanwhile, your other PR is in review. So a lot of developers actually don't follow this and then they delete the master branch, fork it again, and it's just a lot of work basically.
Makes sense.
Okay, and we also should talk a little bit about their commit structure, right? Because they have a very standardized way to, to say what your commits are doing. So I know that we have different scopes, and that can be a little unexpected for first-time contributors.
Whenever you're contributing, make sure that you go through the contributing.md, because that's where they define all the scope. I mean, even when I opened my first PR, I was not aware of it. I was like, what is this? Why my PR keeps failing? Because there is some, the commit structure doesn't match. I was like, okay, what is this? But good thing is, of course, you can go ahead and open any existing merged PR, right? So in case you're confused, I mean, of course, contributing.md is where you can find everything, but just in case you're confused, just open an existing PR and see like how they have committed. And it will give you an idea like, okay, this is how I have to follow. That's what I do generally, because there are, let's say if you have multiple contributing to multiple open source projects, they have different structure and it's hard to remember those, right? Of course, I can go to contributing.md, but I mean, the best way is, of course, just check the existing PR, the closed PR, and then you get idea. And one good thing about contributing.md is also they mention the step, like how you can run it locally, how you can verify your changes, right? So everything is there.
Gotcha. Also, just going back to this commit structure again, so just to contextualize the audience a little bit, what I was referring to is that Angular standardized a pattern for prefixing their commit messages with what they do. So you have different types of commits. You have feat commits, which are introducing new features. You have chore commits, which are just doing day-to-day stuff like running, updating something or updating some dependency, for example. Then you have refactor commits, which, as you may think of, they are just refactoring something but don't really introducing any functional changes, at least in theory. And then you also have like style, which they literally don't introduce any functional changes at all because they're, for example, running the formatter. So they're definitely not introducing any functional changes. So you have different types of scopes for your commit messages to use. So for example, you have a feed, but you can put it into parentheses saying that this feed is for the forms module. So you could say feed under parentheses forms, and then you have your commit message. And the importance of this, so at first glance, it might seem like just a convention that humans are using to understand what's going on. And yeah, that does help. But they also use it to automatically generate change logs when they cut new releases. So I always wanted to stop and take a look at how they're generating this, because it seems like it would really save up a lot of time, even for closed source projects, just for the product team to look at the changes afterwards and figure out what should go into an email marketing or not. So that's actually valuable even for other projects. Do you know a little bit more about how that works, Santosh? Perhaps we can talk a bit about how to even add that to other projects.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, GitHub already has something called releases, so you can do it from there. So let's say if you are following this semantic commit, what is the semver, right? So if you are following a proper semantic versioning and you're following these commits, you can generate it using GitHub Actions. So not GitHub Actions, but I mean you can also do it with GitHub Action. But let's say just forget about GitHub Action. You just want to do it manually. You can actually use GitHub as itself. So if you go to github.com and if you go to your project, there is something called releases. So you can create a new release. And as soon as you create a new release, it will create, of course, a new version, and it will create a change log for you as well. But if you don't want to do it manually, you can do it via GitHub Actions. So a lot of people do use GitHub Actions to do this via automation, because you don't have to be like physically go ahead and click a button, right? So choose whatever fits for you. I mean, if you're doing it, your releases manually, use GitHub Actions. That's a very cool thing to do. Otherwise, just automate using GitHub Action. GitHub Actions also, or you can see GitHub also has the APIs to extract changelog and do it for you. And there are some open source GitHub Actions as well. We use it internally. I mean, at Celonis, we use one open source project. I don't remember the name, but yeah, we do have an open source GitHub Action.
Now, another subject that...
Yeah, I think that's a... I think after GitHub Action, a lot of things became easier. Like now people can automate a lot of things, but some people for now, some people love VS Code, some people love Vim. So it depends on what you like and how you can push your code.
And it really depends, right? I mean, for example, so what we are talking about is, of course, the commit history, right? So the important thing is here is following a commit structure which fits your use case. I mean, for example, as Lucas mentioned, in Angular they have feature, then package name, and then commit message.
Mm-hmm.
But it can differ for your org. So you can choose something else. It totally depends on how you want to show your changelog to the end user. For example, let's say in our use case for Celonis, we have a single repository, mono repository, and then we have close to 25 projects. So of course we want to like group it by the project name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we actually do in that way. So we make sure that whenever we commit, we have all this project name tagged. There is another way called labels. You can also use labels. For example, let's say I can define that in case my project has something called project/A1 project or project/A2 project, and I want to group them in my changelog. I can also follow labels. So labels are also a good idea. And it's easy to define as well. I mean, you can just have a labeler.yml file, define your path, and define which folder, define your folder, and then define the label name. And then any tool, like, of course, if you're creating a changelog, I mean, you can define, how it should be grouped. And then it will be visible like that in your changelog.
Yeah, one thing that we haven't talked much about yet, but I think you already hinted on it, was that Angular is not the core code, it's also the ecosystem. So people can also contribute to Angular not just by writing code to the main repository, but also contributing to other community libraries or even creating their own libraries. Do you think that this would be what, like, when do you think would be a good moment for people to go to that? Would you say that this should be a first step before they try to contribute to the main core code? Or do you think there's no such thing that people can just never have experience contributing to libraries and just go straight to contributing to the core code?
It really depends. Let's say, if I generally try to categorize the contributors in two areas, right? Someone who is a new developer, right, who have never done Angular, and someone who is experienced developer. So if you are an experienced developer, you already know a bunch of libraries because you use it daily, right? I mean, by just using Angular, you can probably do some limited stuff. But if you need, for example, state management, you probably will reach out to NGRX or NGXS or any other library, and you might have tons of similar libraries in your project. So of course, that's an opportunity for you in case you really want to get involved. Because let's agree to this: everyone wants to contribute to big project like Angular, right? But no one wants to focus on the libraries, and that's why a lot of maintainers or open source maintainers are struggling, because of course they also have limited time. They also work somewhere as a full-time developer, but no one cares about it, even though that library has millions of downloads, until unless it's an old version, and then your employer says, hey, why it's not updated, or we want to update Angular and we are stuck because this library is not that latest version. Until that time, no one cares about it. So as an experienced developer, in case you're already using some of those libraries, just go ahead and help them, right? I mean, you can just probably help them upgrade to a new version. That's also contribution, right? That will help them as well. And that will also give you an idea like how to contribute to open source. Or you are using some API from, let's say you started doing state management, and you ended up at some issue which is inside NGRX. And if you can debug it and you can contribute back, that will be a great start as well, right? And that will be helpful for others as well. Of course, there are organizations which has some weird policy, that they don't want people to contribute to open source because for some XYZ reason. But if your organization does not allow, do it from your own time, right? To do it on your time, on your laptop, and have a separate, probably a GitHub account. Some employers are really happy to do, like, have you use your own account. For example, that Celonis. Celonis is, yeah, I can say they're pretty much supportive of these things, so they don't care. I mean, they don't care in the terms. Yeah, I mean, this is good for them as well, right? They have people who are contributing to the framework. But some companies don't think in that way. They think that, okay, if you're contributing, you are probably helping your competitors. I'm not sure how, because you're contributing to an open source project and you're ending. But yeah, that's a different probably topic to discuss about. But yeah, this is what you can do. Like, as an experienced developer, you have more projects to contribute to. But if you're a new developer, probably your chances are a little bit limited because you just know about Angular now, right? So you can just concentrate on probably picking up something from Angular, then try different libraries. Because if you think about web, most of the technologies which you have out there, what you will do using them, probably will create some product. It will be same, right? I mean, probably will reach out to similar APIs. For example, let's say drag drop. If I have to do drag drop in React, probably I'll reach out to some library which already exists. As a new learner, probably I'll also do the same. But that gives me limited opportunity because I'm still not aware of how libraries work. So I have to be like, that's why I always recommend that on day one, don't think about contributing to any project. On day one, your thought should be like, of course, I will give my 6 months to learn about this framework, right? I'll try to understand like how things work, how I can do this, do that. And then think about, okay, if once I think I have reached that point that where I know stuff, how to do, probably create my own library, then I will go ahead and try to like jump into other libraries and see if I can do that. So, or again, for as an experienced developer, let's say if you're working on some internal project and you have use cases as well, because you might want to implement something which is not there, in open source. This is also a good idea, like a good opportunity where you can actually create that open source project, share it with the community, and probably convince your employer that, okay, we should use this project, right? And if it gives more visibility to your organization, why not do that?
Perfect. Yeah. And let's bring the contributions to Angular even more closer to the reality of the day-to-day. So for example, what I'd like to do is to explain to the audience some of the projects that you contributed yourself. So in the introduction, we already briefly mentioned some of the things that you have already done. But perhaps we can even talk about some of the contributions that you did to the Angular core code, because that is definitely going to help people bring to reality the types of things that they can do, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my first year for Angular was actually docs. So that was the time like I started exploring the ways how I can contribute to open source, and I was like, okay, what should I do, and how should I contribute to Angular? And then I ended up at an issue that Angular has libraries, right? You can create libraries. So it was not documented. Like the project structure was not documented. There was your Angular application, like how they look like. It was already documented. Then I was like, okay, this is my opportunity, and I went ahead and did that. That was my first PR for for Angular. But before that, I actually opened my first PR for NGRX. So my first ever PR was not for Angular. So I went to NGRX because, as I said, like if you are experienced developer, you try to do some different things, right? So I was exploring something called schematics. So Angular has this concept of schematics and builders. And I was exploring about schematics, and then I figured out, okay, there is an open issue related to schematics in NGRX. And I was like, okay, let's take this. Let's see how to do it. Of course, it took me some time to go through Angular code base, like how they are doing it, and that's how I made my first PR for NGRX. And then I kept contributing. I mean, I helped them with some APIs. For example, if I remember, my last PR was related to NGRX data, which I still don't understand. I think they deprecated it anyways. And I also like raised several PRs to upgrade NGRX back in days. Now I don't get that much time, like because of course you have full-time job and we have been doing a lot of other stuff, running a community and everything, doing podcast. So, but whenever I get time, like if I see like some open issue which I think I can do it, I take it. I mean, and most of them probably maybe talks. For example, my last PR for Angular was talks. So with new docs, there was a section where you can migrate to standalone components, and that was missing. So I just added that because, of course, I had some free time. So I was like, okay, let's do this. But I don't keep myself limited to only Angular and NGRX. I try to see like if there are other projects. Recently, I raised a PR for Solid. So, of course, I don't work on Solid, but I was just on a podcast with Ryan Carpinato, the creator of Solid, and I was like, okay, how to contribute to Solid? And believe me, I opened the PR during the podcast episode somehow. So I was like, okay, let's do this. On the side, I was doing my PR. So depends. I mean, now I don't try to keep myself. And my last, now there is a PR which is still open, which is for Backstage. If you know Backstage, this is a tool for DevOps, right? So basically, your DevOps team can create different kind of dashboards, documentation, all those. So depends. So it's not like I'm just contributing to Angular and Angular ecosystem now. I try to help wherever I can, wherever I think I have time, and I think this is something which I can wrap up. Because any contribution is useful, right? I mean, don't think like this is the first thing which you like should remove from your mind that, oh, this is very small contribution. No, I mean every contribution is precious because remember, no one else was doing it. I mean, there are millions of developers, but not everyone is actually doing open source, right? And not everyone is actually contributing or making something better, even though they know it, right? A lot of times we go to the doc, we find something wrong and we just ignore it. So if you're doing it, you're doing something great.
Yeah, I would like to ask like a different kind of non-technical questions. So as from our conversation and from the intro as well, a lot of people know that you are doing a lot. You are doing a lot since a long time. Maybe like you said from 2019, you might be doing prior to that. So this is just I am asking for myself as well. How do you manage your time to do this many things, or like when you get time to read, what all those how your days work?
It's very complicated because when people ask me like time management, I was like, okay, dude, I'm the wrong person. I mean, I don't know like how it works
But
because
still, it works, right?
it's
You are doing it.
somehow I mean, yeah, somehow it works. I try to like manage like my time. Probably it really depends when I'm feeling well. I don't try to push myself now because I have multiple what you can say. Uh, yeah, I forgot the term.
Responsibility.
No responsibility. I mean, uh, so there was time like I was not doing anything. So yeah, there's a term for it, right? So no, I forgot about it. But there were multiple times that I was like not feeling like to do anything because I pushed myself so much for like 6 months, and then next 3 months or next 6 months I was not doing anything. So now I've stopped doing it. It's like, okay, if I feel good and I think I want to do it, I will do it. Otherwise, it's okay. I mean, because I already have a lot of things to do. So, for example, our podcast, we do like 2 podcasts per month. So, of course, that's something which also needs time. And then we are doing virtual conf this month, not this month, but next month. This is April, right? Yeah. So next month we are also doing a virtual conf. So I'm also a little bit busy there, promoting things and every CFPs, collecting CFPs, asking people to register, and we are doing it on our own. So it's not like we are getting it sponsored or something. So we're just trying to. It's a virtual conf basically. So we know, like, of course, there will be need for money, but I think we can manage because our community we mostly focus on free stuff. That's our motto. We are for free learning and open learning, mostly doing open source. And my co-founder Lars is also big time advocate for open learning and open source. So that's how we decided to do this. But for example, I just came back from a vacation, so I was on vacation for 2 weeks because of course everyone needs a time off, right?
Yeah.
So time management, yeah, I mean, I'm really bad at it. I mean, I'm still like, I want to record a course, and believe me, it's been pending from a year now. So yeah, not the best person. But the only thing is, of course, somehow it works for me. But don't get motivated from what I do. Just see like how your schedule works, how what you can do. Remember, like if you're doing something for community, that's enough. Like you don't have to do everything. For example, when I started, I was doing mostly open source, right? So when I started in 2019, for a year I was just doing open source. Then I realized, okay, how long a person can do the same stuff? I mean, we're human, right? We get bored. So I decided to do something else, try something else. So I decided, okay, let's do this podcast thing. So that worked. So we are still doing. I'm still doing podcast, but I also have co-hosts just to make sure, like in case I'm not there, so other people can take up. Then, of course, there was a time I was like, okay, I want to write. I don't write much now, but there was a time I was like writing every month. So I was like, okay, this is my jam right now. And then I was doing that. So don't care. Don't think about like doing so much stuff at once. Just think like what you feel like doing at that moment, and just do it. I mean, every contribution, as I said, like it's precious for someone who is trying to learn the same thing which you're planning to write. So just think about that and keep contributing.
Yeah, it's nice advice. Like don't be in a so rush to do a lot of things. Keep doing one things, and after some days, if you look back, you have done a lot of things. Yeah. So
I have another question which is not very technical, but maybe you feel that you have more knowledge about this than time management to speak about this thing, which is the effects of contributing to open source in your career. Because a lot of developers, they put in their minds that they must contribute it to open source to get good jobs. And that's not really true, but it does help. But I'm wondering, from someone that did a lot of contributions, how much do you think that people can justify their time spent on contributing to open source in a way that they're going to think, oh, I'm doing this this is actually a financial investment because this is going to increase my salary or whatever. Like, I'd like to bring a little bit more reality from someone that has dedicated so much time to it.
Good question, because I remember when I started contributing, the first question, so of course, when I was contributing, so I was like talking to NGRX team a lot. And one of the core team member asked me, like, why you are doing contribution? Like, of course, what is your intention? I was like, because I'm enjoying it. And he was like, oh, this is the correct way to do it. Because there are a lot of people who do it for money, or they want to get a good job. There's nothing wrong in it, right? I mean, if you really think that contributing to that particular project will get you a better job, I mean, do it. Nothing to worry about. But my intention was clear. Okay, I want to do it because I want to help community, and this is what I'm enjoying right now. So have an intention. Make your intention clear. Like, if you're contributing to a big project, I think having a clear intention or clear goal is really worth it. And there can be a bad intention, right? I mean, if you know about the new recent project XC, yeah, so they did it for 2 years, right? It was not like they just added this backdoor in a day. They contributed to that project for 2 years, and then they finally saw a chance, and then they added a backdoor. So intention can be wrong, but have a clear goal, good intention, like why I want to contribute. Most of the open source contributors who are doing it, they are not doing it for money, or they are not doing it for good job. They are just doing it because they love it. They love helping people. They love creating something new. If that's your intention, of course, you will contribute for a longer time. If your goal is to get a job, once you get a job, you will just vanish. You will not do it because that was your goal. That was your intention. If your intention is to add a backdoor like 2 years after, so that's a different thing. But this is a really good question for a lot of people. So think of like why you're doing it. And remember, you don't have to be like very like 200s of PRs a month. That's something, of course, impossible unless you are working on it full time, right? And I know some people who are doing it. For example, Matthew, who is contributing a lot to Angular. I don't know how he does that, but he keeps like doing more features than probably someone from Angular team. So he has his intention, right? That he wants to do it. He wants to actually invest his time making this framework amazing, and he's doing it. So yeah, have a clear goal, have a clear intention why you want to do it. In case you want to go longer, just having a passion for doing it will take you longer. Because of course, if my goal was to get a job, I mean, probably I would have stopped a year ago, or like after a year probably, because I got a remote job, and then I'm happy now. And of course, the impact, right? Of course, the impact of contributions, it can lead you to something better. I mean, because I generally tell this to everyone, that whatever I have achieved is because of Angular community. Because there was a day I decided, okay, I will go ahead and contribute to open source. This was not the goal. This was not the goal to like get a good job or come to Germany, but it helped. It helped me get a visibility in the community that, okay, this guy exists and he's doing something which is amazing, right? And people started recognizing me, and there were people who wanted to work with me. So if, let's say, like if your goal was to get a job, you will get it anyways, in case like if you're making a good impact. But have that goal that you want to actually just follow your passion, you want to actually support this project, and it will help you in long term. Because what's the point like getting banished from everywhere after a year, after you get a job? Because you're not going to work on probably that in that organization for more than 2 years or 3 years. I mean, depends. I mean, people work for 5 years, but after 3 years you will come back and contribute to open source to get another job? Doesn't make sense, right? I mean, making yourself visible takes time. And once you lose that visibility, it's hard to get back and show that, okay, you have been doing this, because you have to like start from zero. Like, right? I mean, in 2 years, technology changes, people change. There will be probably new people in the community, and you have to start from somewhere again. So yeah, I mean, have a clear goal, have clear intention.
That makes total sense. And it's great to give people this view of, sure, you can do it if you're just looking to have something in your resume, but it's probably not going to be a good investment of your time afterwards, because, well, for the repository owners, it's most probably not going to be a good investment of their time, because if they stop to train you and then you just leave after you get a job, then what do they do with that time? But also for you, because if you don't stick around long enough to really deeply understand how things work in the code base, then you're missing out on so many aha moments. I think there's also value in that. If you work long enough in a code base built by professionals that are more experienced than you, then over time you're gonna internalize more and more some of the decisions that they made. And you're gonna consciously or subconsciously learn that and be able to apply that in your own projects. So it's kind of like working with, I think people forget this aspect of it. It's like, would you want to work with some of the best engineers in the world? Oh yes, I would learn so much from them. But I don't have a job at Google, I don't have a job at OpenAI, I don't have a whatever. Like, you don't really need that, because there's so many open source projects that are maintained by those brilliant minds. So this is also a great way for you to develop yourself as a professional. And if you don't want to use that knowledge just to get a job, that's fine. Like, create your own startup, whatever, like you can use that knowledge for however you want to make an impact on your life, on other people. So I think that's also something huge to keep in mind. Okay. Guys, we're approaching almost 50 minutes already. This is a very dense subject, so I'm sure that we could talk about it for 10 hours more. But I wonder if there's anything you'd like to say before we start wrapping it up.
Sure. I mean, we are doing this conference, as I said at the start. So TIL Conf, this is Learning Conf, which will be virtual on May 15 and 16. So if you can add that into your description, I mean, that will be helpful to all the listeners there, so they can attend, because we have more than 40 speakers. That's the plan. I mean, I'm still scared, because this is going to be the first conference which we are doing, and we are a little bit ambitious in terms of getting 40 speakers in 2 days. But let's see, hope we can do it. And yeah, that's
okay. Well, on my end, I'm just going to promote the two companies that produce this show. So Top End Devs and Envoyed. If you're looking to learn more about web development in general, then there are a bunch of other podcasts and content created about Top End Devs, so you can take a look at their website. And if you're a company or just someone looking for outside developers and designers to help you on your project, then you may have experienced like a situation where you hired someone and you didn't like the way that the work was presented or the communication, and then you just maybe got frustrated by that. So Envoyed aims to solve this exact problem. So the way that they work is by billing you only by task and only after they are delivered and approved by you. So you have predictable costs, and you also have quality control, because if you're not happy with the result, you can just ask for a change until it is up to your quality standards. So it is really the best of both worlds, talking about outsourced design and software development services. So if you're interested in that, is unvoid.com. So Unvoid. Yeah, so these would be my promos. I'm gonna take a look at this link to say a little bit more about this conf. But in the meantime, Subrat, why don't you tell us what you're working on?
Yeah, so I would like to promote my channel, YouTube channel, which is Fun of Heuristic. I think mostly on Angular. So please go ahead and watch it. And currently I'm working on like some new hobbies I pick up. Like I started kickboxing, just trying to see if it how it works. Uh, and we'll continue on that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And I will send this to our team so that they can add the link to the conference in the show notes. But for those of you that maybe don't have a comment section from where you're listening this from, it is TIL-conf.netlify.app. So this is Learning Conference 2024. So I believe that if you look that up on Google, you should probably find that eventually. And it's going to be happening on May 16 and May 17. Just to confirm, Santosh, this is going to be a remote conference, or is this going to be in person?
No, it's a virtual conf.
Okay.
And it's free. It's free for everyone. So
Cool.
And
cool.
it will start and end like for a full day or?
no, so we are planning to do it during 4 to 9:30 p.m. CET time, so we can cover most of the time zones and our speakers are also from different time zones. So that's where I'm scared, as I said. So managing all those 40 speakers in different time zones, that will be difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Guys, thank you so much. Santosh, thank you so much for being on the show. Please feel free to hop back in whenever you want to discuss anything. So you have our contact info. Just send us a message and we can find a slot. It's always great to have you on the show. Thank you
so much. Thank you, Subrat. Thank you, Lucas. And it was great like talking to you. Of course, I missed Armin, but I chat with him later.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. It was a nice conversation. Pretty like knowledgeable for everyone.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And I'll see you in the next episode.